Now it's time to return to the political cesspool.
Excellent!
And welcome back to the Political Cesspool, everyone. I'm your host, James Edwards. As I just mentioned, joining me in the cesspool tonight, co-hosting Eddie Miller, and as always, doing the production and engineering work, our Lord of the Board, Art Frith. It is our esteemed honor and privilege to welcome our guest this evening, K.Macdonald, a professor of psychology at California State University in Long Beach and a very respected columnist. Dr. Macdonald, thank you for taking the time to come on our program tonight.
I'm very happy to be here.
It seems as though when we were mentioning some of your work during the first half hour of the program tonight, and I followed some of your research and writings for a number of years, and it seems as though we share many of the same friends and some of the same foes. I noticed that the lovely Heidi Byrick of the Southern Poverty Law Center has taken a liking to you. They love us, too.
I'm wondering how, yeah, she certainly doesn't, she's trying to campaign against me right now.
Well, you're in good company. Anybody that's...
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Absolutely. Well, let's just get down to business then. 3.5 years ago, you published the article Thinking About Neoconservatism. It's an excellent and factual article in which you pointed out that when members of the Jewish community reach critical mass, they attempt to take over certain intellectual and political movements in order to make society more palatable to their interests. And you specifically mentioned foreign policy and immigration as their hallmark interests. What led a man of your stature to expose the truth on such a taboo subject?
Well, it's just a matter of reading about things. In the case of immigration, I really wasn't aware of that, but I was just doing research on anti-Semitism in America, and I started to realize that Jews, going back to the beginning of the last century, were deeply involved in immigration movements, and that really was a sort of Jewish community interest, and the main Jewish activist organizations were all involved in that. And in the case of neoconservatives, it's just basically reading the newspapers, and trying to understand how these people's ethnic commitments were shaping their attitudes on foreign policy. I mean, it's interesting just today to see the story about Douglas Feith and all the papers today about how he's now, been officially declared to have behaved inappropriately in as far as the manufacture of intelligence leading up to the war in Iraq. And this is an extremely serious charge. But, what I talk about is his deep Jewish commitments, his very strong connections to the parties in Israel and that sort of thing. So it's not rocket science. I mean, these people have a strong paper trail of their ethnic commitments, and now, we're finding out that, that they have been involved in falsifying evidence and so on, leading us to this extremely disastrous war that we're engaged in now.
Well, you look at the Bush administration, and without a doubt, I think Pat Buchanan once said Capitol Hill is Israeli-occupied territory, and that can either be a good or a bad thing depending on your political philosophy. Certainly, we don't think it's in favor of American interest to have that occur when these Jews in question have, in the case of Michael Chertoff, and there are others, dual citizenship with a foreign country, and these are the people that are heading up our government. And then when you expose that in this Orwellian era, men like you who speak honestly about these politically incorrect issues get maligned by the enforcers of cultural Marxism. Why does that occur?
Yeah, we're seeing that quite a bit these days. President Carter's book is the most recent example where here you have a very, very great he's someone who's involved in a lot of charity work. He's won the Nobel Prize, and here he's being accused of being an anti-Semite. His name is being smeared. There's all this intimidation going on. And the same with Professors Mearsheimer and Walt of the University of Chicago and Harvard, respectively. They've been attacked as anti-Semites. So it really doesn't matter how truthful you are, how honest you are, how much evidence that you have. It's not going to matter. They're going to call you an anti-Semite. They're going to do what they can to keep this from becoming widely known and discussed by the average person. I think a lot of people know now, but we're still a long ways from influencing Congress. I don't see any indication that Congress or the president is going to change in this regard. So But I think it's a gradual process. You know, when more and more smart people who are writing op-eds and understand what happened, I think it's a matter of time before you start to influence the political class in Washington.
So is it just basically the old communist tactic? If you can't argue with a man's ideas and his research, you try to discredit him, try to marginalizing him in such a way that the average American wouldn't want to be associated with some kind of vile degenerate.
Yes, and those tactics have been very effective. I mean, calling someone a racist or an anti-Semite is just, most people would just be horrified to be called that. And it's certainly the case when I was first called an anti-Semite, it's chilling. It's very difficult to deal with. I certainly, as an academic, I wasn't used to that kind of thing. But, if after a while you just start to accept that that's part of the territory. That's going to happen. It happens to everybody who gets involved. I don't care who you are. If you're a president, I don't care if you're a professor at Harvard, or if you care if you're a billionaire, you're going to be smeared and intimidated. They don't care who you are.
You're exactly right about that. And, it seems to happen to everyone. And I can remember the first time it happened to us. And you have to have thick skin. At first, I spent some time scratching my head asking why they would say these things about us. And I'm sure you did, too. But then you get used to it. It's a sad day and age when you have to get used to that kind of behavior and those bullying tactics. But it would be one thing, when you're talking about the freedom of speech about any issue, and this is a country that supposedly lives on the First Amendment, even if you are dead wrong in your thesis, you ought to be able to express your God-given freedom of speech. But what's so sad about your work in particular is that you've been proven right in your ideas over the course of the last 3 years. No honest observer of politics can say that our foreign policy doesn't blatantly favor Israel and only Israel. What's really going on in the Middle East? Why are we over there?
Well, in the case of Iraq, there was this huge buildup by the neoconservatives, and it's an amazing story, really. All the involvement in the op-ed, departments of newspapers, television, the Fox News Channel, a huge involvement in the media, but also within the administration, people like Paul Wolfowitz, people like Douglas Feith, and so on. There's a whole lot of them. And they all sort of interact together, and, collectively, they had a huge influence. And I think, frankly, that President Bush was sort of naive when he began his presidency. I think he's probably smarter now, but I think when he began, I really don't think he was up to the job in the sense of being able to, deal with these very strong personalities who had very strong agendas. I don't think he really saw where these people were coming from. At least I would hope not, because if he did know, then he's just criminally traitorous to have done this. But
yes, Dr. McDonald.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah, go ahead.
This Eddie Miller right here, Mr. Dr. McDonald, I kind of have to disagree on you there because it seems to me that he would have to be incredibly stupid not to have seen that in the beginning. And even more so now that after he's been with the presidency, 6 years now, and he knows anybody, unless he really is retarded, legally retarded, he would have to know that he's been led down the primrose path into fighting a war for to make the world safe for Israel, like Pat Buchanan and others would say.
I think that at this point.
So why would he keep doing that? I mean, if he's this naive, why would he keep on doing that?
Well, I think he's stuck. I mean, once he's in there, it's not easy to get out without losing face, without
right. But he's already lost face.
Disaster situation in Iraq. I mean, the civil war's already started, and everybody who looked at it. I mean, I read a lot of stuff before the war, and I also predicted this would happen. A lot of people could see this coming. You have a society that is based on these three sects that haven't gotten along in 1,000 years. You're not going to go in there with an army and institute democracy, and they're going to be like Republicans and Democrats, and Kiwanis Club. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, it would be good. It would be nice to know if you were curious, but whether he was complicit in this scheme or just ignorant.
I would like to know. I really would.
It would be interesting to know, but I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I think Cheney certainly was far more involved and sort of knew what
I would buy that. I would certainly agree with that.